to the Excellence Cartel quarantine edition still. We're all in lockdown. Hope you guys are doing well. I have Gramps and I have Sue.
What's up?
What's going on?
Oh, man. It's been a week. It feels like it's been a month. A week feels like it's like a bodybuilding show to me. The last 2 weeks, like on repeat for the last 4 weeks, like day 14 to day 13, day 14 to day 13, where it's just that last little bit of suck. You know what I mean? You're pulling it down. So that's where I'm at, I guess, on that. But I'm going to kick it off with Jason because Jeff gets mad at me whenever I actually called you Jeff. Holy shit.
Wow.
First time. Wow.
Times are changing.
I know times are changing. Maybe I've changed from all this, but Jason, sir, how have you been? How's your last 7 days been?
I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's business as usual. And I keep saying that, but that's just how it is, on my end, really. Things are growing well and everything's going good with everything. My clients that have a lot of them like hormonal metabolic issues and gut issues that I brought on, and I've probably brought on 13 or 14 since this whole debacle started, and just everyone's doing well. Like, there's when you're healing guts and you're fixing hormones, there's always like a little hiccup, but like everyone generally is turning the corner and doing well. And so, that makes me feel good that there's, impact and things are moving in the right direction. So it just, as a coach, it makes you feel good when you see that. If all you get is negative check-ins, it's a rough week. So everything's going pretty good on my end. I am a little antsy, that's about it. I look forward to my weekends where we, go to First Watch after church, and, usually Saturday nights we take the boys out and maybe get a little ice cream or something. So I'm missing some of that stuff, but overall, just charging forward, staying positive, and I'm not letting it bring me down in the slightest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's, I'm sorry, if you see social media, you're starting to see people start cracking. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just starting to like unravel now. And I'm like, oh dear Lord. Sue, how's the garage gym going? Have you been reported on anymore? Have they like sent more police to your establishment to break you and your boyfriend up?
Man, people need to mind their own business. It's just me and my buddy Steve training in his garage. And, one of his neighbors called the cops, but luckily, we know the cops. So it was no issue. I also got my hair cut. I got shit for that too. But, it was just me. My barber made a house call, and I got my fade done. And, again, people need to mind their own business. Because, like, I'm being safe about everything. I'm limiting my contact to probably like 2 to 3 people max, and I'm wearing my mask when I go grocery shopping.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I'm not wearing
you know what?
it.
Well, dude,
I'm wearing a mask, dude. It's like Halloween down here every time.
Well, Jason, they are requiring by law that a lot of stores won't let you in if you don't wear a mask.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, and so right now it's like people are
we
lined
don't have
up.
that here.
They're lined up outside the store, and they'll let in 50 people at a time. So if you go grocery shopping on a weekend, you'll see like a line wrapped around the building, people waiting to get inside.
Dude, I'm so happy we haven't got to that point. God, we don't have any of that in Kentucky. I roll right into Kroger. I go there like twice a week or 3 times a week just to get my Starbucks because that's still open in the Kroger.
And there's a cop by the door, so you have to sanitize your hands, and the cop watches you.
Oh my God.
It's crazy out here. But listen, guys, like aside from all that bullshit, business as usual as well. I signed, I think it was like 6 clients in the last maybe 10 days. So
I mean, you're doing good. You are pumping out a lot of content.
Yeah.
And you've dug in rather than letting it break you down. It's
the
good.
Q&As and all that stuff. So things are good with me. Yeah, I'm just a little cold because Jason's like pushing me now with our diet. So he dropped my fats down to 20 grams a day. I mean, most bikini girls have more fat than that. So I have my blanket because I'm cold.
Sue, I would light up a bowl with you and warm you up if I could. I would do it.
Yeah.
Let's see. My week, I finished my book that I've been working on.
Nice.
I got that over with. I've been working on retooling my website, getting it where I'm going to go more online coaching and kind of join you gentlemen. I'm still going to keep some in-person people, but I'm going to start scaling towards online coaching. I've kind of enjoyed writing more and things like that. So
Plus, you don't want to be at the mercy of the government again.
Yeah, no shit. I enjoy putting
mean,
out content. That's like my big thing. I've really found
Yeah.
I've actually liked was, oh, I don't mind really writing. But you're right. You know, like I was telling my team after this, I was always thinking Iron House 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going down the road, right? Now I'm like, scale back. I'm thinking about I want property for Iron House 1 before I make a move to number 2, and then own enough property where I can have other businesses on that property with me that are essential, that could stay open if I had to shut down. Because I think because of all this, they're just going to create a new way of life where they're like, oh, sorry, you guys are back to phase 0. So you guys got to shut everything down, you know?
I agree. Like, I feel like now that they've fucked us once, they're going to be like 3 months later, oh, well, the curve's looking pretty big. Let's revert back to social distancing in your house. And you know what I mean? And everyone's supposed to just jump.
Well, dude, the thing I don't get is I don't understand. Like, okay, I get it. You know, it's the whole asymptomatic. It can overwhelm our hospital, XYZ. But I'm kind of to the point now where I'm like, why can't we go out there and you tell us the rules we need to play by, and we allow us, like, it's like they're babysitting us. Like, oh, nope, you guys aren't safe enough to be able to go out there and stay 6 feet apart. We don't trust you. And I'm like, well, I mean, well, I don't fucking trust you either.
I can't even read Facebook anymore because, I mean, people that I thought were really intelligent are just not saying things that are intelligent. And maybe I'm sure they look at me and say the same thing when I say open it up. But I mean, dude, let's talk percentages. In Kentucky, we have like 120 deaths. We have 4.5 million freaking people. That's 0.00007% chance of dying of this shit. I literally have a better chance of dying in a car every single day I get in one. But let's ruin the whole economy over it. Like, I'm just over that part of it. Like, simple statistics, man. Like,
dude,
it just doesn't add up.
I've been tweeting at my mayor. Well, you all have seen that on my
IG story. That. Legalize weed.
Dude, this dumb motherfucker. Let me just say this before we begin our episode.
Did he respond?
To me,
did he respond?
No, because he's a pussy. But anyway, he gets on there and he's like, he goes and does this News Channel 5 exclusive here in Nashville and says, look, the federal government is not coming to save Nashville. We're going to have to do at a minimum a 20% property tax increase. What? Now, we just got fucking leveled 2 weeks before COVID with a tornado that fucked us in the ass. And then this dude comes along and goes, hey, the federal government's not coming to save us. And then Monday, the governor came out, right, and said, hey, I'm getting rid of the stay-at-home order. Before the governor did that, the mayor had gone out in his press conference earlier that morning saying, expect a stay-at-home order extinction for Nashville. And I'm like, if the federal government's not coming to fucking save us, then what are we doing? You just go ahead and close the whole city down. Like, let's just start over somewhere else. Like, let me just move my equipment to Wilson County, you know, or some shit. But he then changes it today that he's going to phase open Nashville. But I'm like, look, if there's a $300 million deficit, then why the fuck don't we legalize dope and get this shit moving? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not going to get $300 million back because Nashville's a tourist city, and I don't think many people are going to be dying to come here, especially to go to a bar that's going to be crowded with people. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I just think that's going to take a little bit more time.
I think you're wrong. I
don't know, man.
I think once they say Nashville is open, it's going to be crowded as shit again. 100%.
I don't know if I think it'll be that crowded.
I do. I think it'll be. I think it'll be crowded again. Maybe not like at its peak, but dude, people are gonna come. Like, yeah. But
well,
that's my opinion.
Regardless, I think he's a dumbass.
Ride that bull.
Yeah.
Sue, I'm coming back for the bull. But I'm just watching him, and I'm like, dude. I can't wait to vote. And this is another thing. And then, like, on it, I think you're gonna see more people that ever go out and vote in 2020. I think people are just gonna be like, yeah, you voted to lock me up. Fuck you. You're out. You know what I mean? Like, that's exactly how I'm going to look at it and be like, yeah, you're a part of the asshole. Bye. I don't want to deal with you. Because I don't think, well, I understand the purpose of the lockdown. I think they could have done it a completely different way. I think we could have phased the lockdown in. Like, you know, like we need to scale some things back. So if you're a gym, you need to cut by 70% occupancy. and put these precautions. They didn't even try that. They just did this like fucking nuke them and think about it. I'm like, we don't even treat our enemies that way and how we deal with them. So it was just really interesting, but I guess we will begin now. So if you guys are a fan of the Excellence Cartel and you like what we do, be sure to share us, leave us a review and all that. With that being said, we're going to talk today about cortisol and sleep. This is a question that we get a lot. You know, you'll have people who are tired and wired. You have people who wake up tired, people who wake up wired, people who are wired at night, people who are tired at night, people who are wired in the middle of the night. And this is because of your cortisol and melatonin issues being off, the balances between the two and your circadian rhythm. So we're going to kind of take a little step into that today and kind of some stuff that we see as coaches and what you guys can do to fix that. And then kind of like some advanced topics like getting into HRV and monitoring that and how you can adjust things from there perhaps. But with that being said, I'm going to kick it off to Sue to kind of start this one. Sue, what is the number one way that you address a cortisol problem when you identify one with a client? Like, how do you go about doing that? Like, where does it start on your intake form?
Well, I think, to answer that question directly, I ask about sleep schedules. I ask my clients when they go to bed, when they wake up. Is it consistent throughout the week? Because I have a lot of clients who work various shifts or just have a simply different family schedule on the weekends. So I start looking at that first, their sleep hygiene, basically. And then I ask them about their, further dig into sleep hygiene and ask them, what do they do in the hours leading up to going to bed? And then I will ask about, stressors in their lives, professional or personal, their training, obviously, physiological stress, all the different types of stress that can, over time, affect your adrenals, cause adrenal fatigue, and then, throw off your circadian rhythms when cortisol gets, chronically elevated over time. So that's where I would begin. But I think we should explain what cortisol does and how it's secreted in the adrenals and all that. So I don't know. I've talked enough, but I think Jason's a good guy to talk about the peaks and valleys of cortisol and how they naturally should be.
Fair enough. I think that's a great call. I will say this. Don't we just love it when doctors say that adrenal fatigue doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Hear it all the time.
Yeah. I mean,
you know what? They say adrenal insufficiency, but they won't recognize adrenal fatigue.
Right. And I think it's all semantics if you think about it. You can see it on labs. So it's call it whatever you want. But you can certainly see it. I mean, when you take someone's 4-point cortisol test, it's clear as day. I mean, we know how it should go. It should be higher in the morning. And then as the day kind of goes on, it's kind of like a slow, like a little gradual bit more peak. And then it starts to just come on down so that you can get ready to sleep in the evening. So, I mean, when you take a 4-point cortisol, they normally do it at 8 a.m., noon, 3 p.m., somewhere around there. And then they'll get you a 9 p.m. one. And so you can map out how this is going. And ZRT is one of the companies that has a 4-point cortisol test. So you can Google that if you're listening right now. Nutrition Dynamic has them on their website, which is really nice. You just go to nutritiondynamic.com. That's what I use. And so you can get your test if you suspect that you have this. But like Jeff said in the very beginning of the podcast, it can kind of go all over the board. You could have a flat line where you're just not producing any cortisol. You could have where in the morning it's low and it's spiking at night, which is going to get more into what we're talking about today with sleep and how to deal with that. But just know that, the cortisol pattern really should be going up in the morning. It peaks around midday and then starts to come down. So that's what you need to know and understand when you're looking at your own labs. And a lot of these labs will tell you, if this clinically high, it'll give you an H, or this is clinically low. And then we can get into protocols from here about what we do, what supplements we may use, and how I think we need to address, obviously, how cortisol affects melatonin, different things along those lines. So we usually do things so organically here. We don't really make a big plan. Did I cover what you wanted me to hit for that part there? Or is there anything more in depth you guys want to add about testing and just how the lines should go? Someone should cover a flip circadian rhythm and what that looks like, because you're going to see that a lot.
I'll just add real quick that the levels, if you test it in the morning, the levels should be around 10 to 20 I think it's mcg, micrograms per deciliter. And then in the afternoon, it should be like a fraction of that, between like, I think it's like 3 to 8 or 3 to 10. And so if you obviously have something outside of that in your lab results, you'll know if you're low or you're high. But it should, like Jason and I both said, it should peak in the morning for most people. And then I think Jason, would you agree that there's some inaccuracy in the blood
Yes.
tests? So the best way to
Yeah,
give
it is, but like, I can't always get people to spend, tons on labs and then also spending more money on ZRT.
Right.
So a lot of times I'll just get the blood cortisol AM test, and I like it around 12. I think 20 is too high. If you're trending to 20, yes, that's the range. But if you're up there, to me, even though you don't get a clinical high reading, that is trending the wrong direction so I look for around 12 is a really nice number. But the labs for blood, people will say they're not as accurate, but it's going to give you a good idea. And if I don't want to have someone spend more money on ZRT, I hate to have to do it. But if it's just a huge problem, then more money needs to be sent there, and then maybe not as many other labs. You know what I mean? So, but yes, the more accurate is the ZRT, where you do a 4-point and you're spitting into a little like vial and you send that off. So saliva. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's also important to talk about with your cortisol. When his cortisol is high, you have testosterone that's being leached because they work on an axis with each other. So you'll see that a lot with men. I've noticed is I had a guy actually do a 4-point cortisol test, and he was the flip-flop version where he was high all in the morning, high all in the day, and then was like low all at night and so forth. And his testosterone levels for 29 was like, I think they were 147 or something like that. And he had the typical symptoms of it. Cortisol loves belly fat. So it tends to bind there even more than anywhere else when you have higher cortisol levels. So he had the typical fat patterning starting to show up. He was, hard time building muscle, body fat on his belly and his lower back. And sure enough, the labs showed that. Jason, how often do you see a flip-flop circadian rhythm when you get people? Because I actually have seen it a few times. I mostly see it out of men more so than I do out of women.
Oh no, I see it way more in women. Just me
That's
personally. I don't see cortisol issues nearly that much in men at all, to be honest with you.
I've actually, out of like 10 of my guys, like 6 of them all had issues compared to the girls.
Wow.
Where I've
Yeah,
had like
I don't see
30
that at all.
girls would be like maybe, I don't know, 10 of the girls, it was like, a third, and then the guys was over half.
That's been completely different than my findings, but most of my men are on HRT, and so that's going to keep cortisol down because as Jeff Black just told you all, there's an inverse relationship between cortisol and testosterone. So if you keep your testosterone in good ranges, you're not going to see that. So it's possible a lot of the guys you're running are completely natural.
Oh, they are.
And they probably haven't lived the lifestyle very long, and so
no, but that's important for average Joes and average Gans who are listening to understand.
So that's kind of outside of my client base. And I think that's why. And most of my women I get with all these problems are the type A, the competitor, they want the good body, been dieting all the time. So I think that makes sense. Wow, that's what I see. And since you do a lot more general clients, I think that makes sense, especially when they're natural and just getting into the sport. So, but that's good that you can find that and fix that, because I'm sure where you were headed was, that's going to be your angle to fix his testosterone too, as you move along. The one thing that is important in sleep to understand. We talked about the inverse relationship between cortisol and testosterone, and there's an inverse relationship between cortisol and melatonin too. Right. So as cortisol is rising, unfortunately, melatonin is going the opposite direction and dropping. So, and melatonin plays obviously a huge role in helping us, close our eyes and actually fall into that true sleep. So obviously that's one of the issues with cortisol being elevated. And then, some of the other issues you see is not being able to turn the mind off. So, that is a problem as well, where people just can't relax at all. So you've got that anxiety built up at night too. So, there's a couple things going on there with the sleep, and then also neurotransmitters start to get affected too when cortisol stays high. So you're going to have less GABA, less serotonin. So it plays a huge role. That's why I've said before that, like, I think really to keep the body as healthy as possible, managing stress and keeping cortisol metabolism high is one of the biggest things you can do with your clients, yourself, in educating your followers is that right there is cortisol management.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree as coaches, sometimes it's kind of hard to sell clients. I know for my gym pop clients, when I'm like,
100%.
Hey, I think, you got high cortisol and you're stressed. They're like, I'm not stressed. I'm like, well, like
right.
You're the one who's saying
you're defensive immediately.
You're waking up for 2 a.m. in the morning till 4,
right.
and then you go to get up at 6:30 and you feel like you've been beaten with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like,
you're so right though. I mean, like I had recently a guy hire me, and I'm trying to fix his digestion. And I mean, there are issues like gas reported, and I've got like a pretty nice stack. And he's like, man, I just can't afford all this. Can you cut some things? And I'm like, oh man. And then the next breath, like, it's like, oh, I want to add a pre-workout. And I'm like, you're just not getting what I'm putting down here, And so it is difficult sometimes to sell someone on that. And if they won't listen, it's tough. I mean, there's good books out there. Like if you read The Cortisol Connection, it's hard to walk away from not having that belief that, man, this is driving a lot of disease, a lot of the issues in our society. And it's not, again, people listening, it's not that cortisol is bad. It's a response to too much stress. The stress and all that is what's bad, but built up cortisol, unfortunately, goes from being anti-inflammatory to causing a lot of problems when it's not metabolized and moved out of the body, which is caused from not moving enough, usually, to burn it up. But then if you're moving too much and you're too stressed, then it's there constantly too. So it's that middle ground. So for a lot of gen pop, they're just not moving enough to burn it off. But then you've got our competitors and our type A's who are just working too hard, just pumping it out too much that the body can't keep up. So there's kind of that different dichotomy there. But yeah, hopefully that clears it up.
Yeah, no, by the way, if you guys are jotting down references for book, there's a really good book called Why Zebras Get Ulcers. Don't get ulcers. Sorry. Apostrophe problem. My bad. Sue, anything you want to chime in there? Because I know between Jason and I, you have a little bit of gym popping competitors. What's kind of been your experience there on that?
I do, yeah. I've noticed across the board over time that my clients who work in high stress jobs, particularly the medical field, like I have a couple of doctors on the team, nurses, especially right now, they tend to lose weight a lot slower. People who travel all the time, constantly changing time zones in their travel, I find that those clients drop the slowest. Even if they adhere to the plans at about 90% to 100%, they are still very, very slow. And that is 100% due to messed up sleep, being jet lagged, and having elevated cortisol. And I think the one thing I want to add, just for people to understand, is like, the function of cortisol and the adrenal glands and all that is to fuel you for flight or fight. And so your body will actually liberate glucose to, physically fuel you for escape, if you have like a physical threat. But the problem is that, with, people who work stressful jobs like that, you're constantly being psychologically stressed. And that's what leads to adrenal fatigue over time. It's that constant triggering of cortisol. And the only one thing I want to add is that cortisol also inhibits insulin. So we've talked about it being counteractive to testosterone and to melatonin, but it's also counteractive to insulin as well, and the reason for that is because we don't want insulin storing that sugar, right? The body doesn't want it to be stored. It wants to be readily available in your bloodstream to fuel everything. So that's why it kind of shuts that off. And the other thing is digestion. So it'll shut off your PNS too. So you're SNS dominant, and that leads to dysmotility, dysbiosis, and it can be like a feedback loop, which causes more inflammation and more cortisol release due to the dysbiosis. So I see that a lot with a lot of people.
Yeah, before I really got into into sleep and HRV and all that, I used to go to bed at 8 and I'd get up at 2. And that was just, I was like 6 hours sleep, 4 cycles, you know, based upon the typical, you get a little bit of REM, you get a little bit of deep, you get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, every, you know, cycle of sleep. And I just remember when I went through that HRV course, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll get this HRV band. And I'll be honest, you know, being a coach, I have to work at my sleep. Like I have to like really work at it to get good sleep. And I think that if someone like me who takes all the supplements, who has all these things we're going to talk about, can still admit I have to work at it, that should be a take home message for everyone. Because I remember when I got that whoop band and I was watching my sleep, I was only getting like 4.5 hours of sleep, because you could be in bed for, you know, 6 hours, but you might only have actually been getting like 4.5. You usually lose an hour worth of sleep a night from in bed time to what you sleep. So, you know, when clients be like, yeah, no, I sleep like 4 or 5 hours, I'm like, oh, well, that's a problem right there, you know, and then trying to convince them of it. I want to turn the wheels a little bit though. And I want to get into, what do you guys think causes the chronic cortisol? Like, how do you think in a gym pop person, let's take a gym pop and let's take a competitor. So Sue, in a gym pop person, how do you think that cortisol problem starts? Because it just doesn't start overnight. Do you want to kind of play out the scenario by the time they get to you?
I think by the time they get to me, I think it's a combination of, you know, repeated dieting over time to try to lose weight. You know, maybe not approaching exercise in a very balanced fashion, maybe doing a little too much high intensity stuff, especially the women who kind of fall prey to all those classes and, you know, aerobics and all of that. Not knowing how to support their cycle with like magnesium and zinc, which can help with HPA dysfunction, which is also a comorbidity or something that also happens with, you know, adrenal fatigue and elevated cortisol over time. So it's a mix of all that stuff. And it's also a mix of like, you know, soft skills, like knowing how to manage stress, knowing how to say no to things, and prioritizing self-care and sleep. So it's a mix of all of that. You know, like I said, a lot of my Gen Pop clients, they work very stressful jobs. They got to balance professional life with personal life. You know, oftentimes they're single mothers. So a lot of that stuff is uncontrollable. So I just encourage my clients to control what they can and be smart about things and prioritize their time and be able to say no to things that would take away from their self-care. But yeah, by the time they get to me, they just don't know how to do all that stuff, or they've been doing it the wrong way. And I have to re-educate, not from a physiological perspective, but from psychological mentality as well.
How frustrating is it when you get a client like that though, and they want to lose 30 pounds in 90 days because that's what they did 3 years ago, and they want to be able to do that again? It's like, you know, your typical Mrs. Jones sees it. How do you sit them down and explain, well, yeah, you could do that. You know, back then you could do that, but here we have these other issues going on. Like, how do you relate to them the difference between sympathetic nervous system dominance, the fight or flight, and then the need to get into a PNS, rest and digest state? Like, how do you break that down to them? Because I know that's a complex thing to take and to shove it down their throat.
Well, I like explaining things in a very simple manner to people, and I'll have them try certain things and certain examples. And, you know, I think part of this has come down to coaching, right? You have to sort of, you know, lead the horse to water and make it drink too. So I explain to them that, you know, every time that you diet, every time that you try to change your physique, it becomes a whole different journey every single time you try to do it. Because dieting and training and all this stuff, to an extent, is like, it's cumulative, and it's sort of one level sort of builds on the other. And you could build something, you know, disastrous, or you can build something that continues to fuel you into your later years in life. So I try to make them understand that first. But, you know, if someone's stressed out, for example, like, I'll just say, like, you know, I had a new client recently. I'll use this as an example. Young kid, 17 years old. He was put on some crazy low carb diet, super, super high protein, a lot of fat burners, all this stuff. And his digestion was a mess. Everything was just like messed up. And I was like, listen, like, I know what's going on here. You give me 3 days into our program and I'll teach you how to fix this, and, you know, I'll show you why. So we started tracking his blood glucose. He came to me 97 fasted. 3 days in, it was down to like 80 something. And then now it's down to like 60 something. And I explained to him the connection between stress and insulin resistance and sensitivity and whatnot. And he began to feel better. Bowel movements were there, and he bought in. And from there,
did you use some GDA Max?
I did. I used GDA, and I have him taking Cortis too.
Yes.
So, and I'll talk about another client later on, which I had to take 1 Cortis per meal for 3 days straight.
Yep.
But yeah, Jeff, that's what I would do. Lead by example and do something real quick and quantifiable so they can see and feel the results. So then they're in.
Yeah, I use the blood glucose trick. I'll have clients who will bitch about their sleep. I'm like, well, cool. On the day you have crappy sleep, when you wake up that morning, pin your blood glucose. And like, they'll be like 118, like, holy shit. I'm like, well, that's what happens when you have bad sleep. Like
one night of bad sleep will elevate FBG.
Yeah, it will. And that's one thing that people need to take away. That's a way you can monitor your sleep to some degree if you don't have a wearable app. Of course, at that point, you have to break down digestion, a few other variables, but it can at least start trailing you, or you can start tracking in the right direction. Jason, I want to toss to you. How hard of a sale is it to a competitor that you get that the first thing they have to do is a cortisol reset with you and explaining why, especially because you're dealing, like you said, a type A who wants to keep going? But how do you approach that in the beginning to set them up for the success that you're getting with all the female clients you're getting? Because you are the bikini coach. I mean, we know that. You're like master bikini coach.
Yeah. Can't do anything else.
Yeah, can't do anything else. Suck. But how do you kind of sell that? Because I know that 2 years ago you started talking about that, and it was like you were met with fucking idiot, and now it looks like I see all these other coaches doing it. Yeah, I told her to do this and that, and I'm like, oh well, Jay was doing that 2 years ago,
Right. Well, fortunately at this point, I think people know that I help a lot of people just to get hormones back in range, help to get their health back so they can do what they love. So most of the people that come to me, they have issues and they will spell it out in their email when they're like, entering, email to me when they're inquiring. So I can usually then take that and give them a understanding of what's, I believe, is going on with their body. And then I don't get any pushback on labs with those people because they've already felt the issues. And then when I give them a quick synopsis of what's kind of going on internally, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then we get labs, and it almost always, comes back the way I explained it would based on their symptoms. And so a lot of times I don't get that hard pushback. Now, there are plenty of times I get people through DMs who maybe heard me on this show or on another show, or, just read something, but they haven't really delved into it. And when I say, look, it's going to be training less, it's going to be supplementing to try to fix your gut if it's a problem, it's going to be fixing estrogen dominance, it's going to be, your cortisol is probably going to be an issue. When I explain the program, then I do get pushback from those people. And I just tell them, look, here's your symptoms, here's what's going on. And, I'll be here when you want help. And I can't force people. I just explain based on symptoms the best that I can what is going on internally. And most people are like, okay, that makes sense. And then some of the really smart ones will go away and they Google estrogen dominance, and they Google low progesterone, and they Google, cortisol dominance. And they're like, man, yeah, this sounds like me. Now that you've said all this, let's fix this. So I think it's education based on symptoms, but most of the time my pointers are contacting me that already have some of those symptoms. So it's not like, I'm trying to convince them to do this. It's like, I'm just explaining what's going on and what they probably need.
Okay. Well, then we have new coaches who listen to this. How did you sell that to say a new coach is working with competitors, and say most competitors only follow who they follow in their circles. So the idea of rest and taking better care of yourself is foreign. So how did you kind of make headway with this approach? How did you sell it would be my question to you. If you were a new coach, how would you sell it to someone?
It's tougher as a new coach because a lot of times the clientele they have don't see the importance of labs. But a lot of times I believe what would have to happen with new coaches is that client's going to have to almost see it in action. So you might have to start the diet. And when they're 12 weeks in and they've lost 4 pounds and they're doing 60 minutes of cardio and eating under 100 carbs, and they're not getting results, and the law of thermodynamics says they should be dropping weight, but they aren't, then they might listen. But I don't have to go that route. But my point is, if it's a new coach and they're not willing to invest in labs and they want to push forward, you push forward. And when they stall out, you're like, I told you so, in a nice way, and then go from there. So, that there's only so many ways to do it, but education is the way.
Do you have anything you specifically recommend, Sue, that your clients might want to read or you take up on when you're trying to institute these protocols with them, which we'll get into here in a second?
I've recommended some of the books that, we read, that Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers book, Seven Systems is another good example. There are some books by Scott Abel that are pretty good, like Understanding Metabolism is one of them. So I've recommended those books to my clients. Who knows if they actually read them or not. But aside from that, I link them to studies and I just put things in practice, like simple things like, like for example, like I have some women who, I'll put all their carbs like in the later meals of the day to help them relax and feel sleepy at night and get them back into the swing of things. Then I'll move the carbs back earlier in the day. I've done stuff like that, and just like I said earlier, pulling cardio, using Cortis, showing them the effects of adaptogens, showing them how to read blood glucose. Those are the things that I do to get them to learn.
Yeah, that carb thing I'll do with my gym pop girls and stuff like that, especially if they report that they're waking up like 2-3 in the morning, just wired as hell. Yeah. I'm like, all right, well, we need your neurotransmitters off, primarily serotonin. So we could add some carbs. Or we could add a supplement called 5-HTP. And 9 out of 10 girls like, well, I'll just flip-flop my carbs around. I'm like, I think that's a great call because you'll go to bed feeling fuller, a little bit more rested, and you're less likely to blow your diet. So I will kind of put that in there for a little bit like you, if digestion and other things are up to snuff.
Yeah, I like doing a giant sweet potato, just a big sweet potato, obviously per macros, but sweet potato with almond butter and a whey shake like Isoperfect. That's like a good, cortisol reset meal, I call it.
What do you all think about using sleeping pills to get around this problem? Because I'll have clients who will take Xanaxes, Ambiens. I had one guy who was a client of mine, and he reached out. We were trying to work on his cortisol, but I haven't heard from him in a little bit. But he was literally taking, by a doctor's order, half of Xanax, and then within an hour, if he was still awake, another half, and then if he was still awake, another half on top of that, until and he only got like 5-6 hours sleep, and he was like, I'm just so tired. I'm like, dude, because you're not getting into any sleep levels. And he bought a whoop, and like his deep was like less than 15 minutes every night, dude.
Oh God.
And
I didn't even know that was possible.
Dude, it was like terrible. His REM was terrible, his deep and all. But you got to think, like he would admit it. He's like, well, sometimes I'd take a full one. So you're talking anywhere from up to half a tab to 3 full tabs.
I bet if you ran that guy's cortisol, it'd be over 25 at night.
I bet it was all over the place. But I mean, within a matter of 2 years, when his sleeping problems began from work, he put fat on so fast on his belly. I remember it was like,
because remember what we were saying.
Yeah,
you're not
mine's
sleeping. You're waking up fast. The blood glucose is high. Now cortisol's high. I mean, man, that's a shitstorm for an early death.
Oh, dude, yeah, and that's what you try to tell him. But it's one of those. Well, my doctor said. I'm like, well, I mean, if your doctor's gonna be there praying over you at the funeral, then like, I'm cool. I'll give him a high five, I guess. I'm a dick. But what's your all's take on that? You guys recommend that in certain situations, or you guys try to tell them all stay away? Because I say stay away, but I know people ask what our opinion are.
I think here's the thing. What I aim to do is find the causes, like what's causing this. And sometimes Western medicine is more about here's a pill. And I feel like Western medicine assumes that the patient is just going to be lazy and only would work that way. But I don't believe that's true of everyone. Like, I think plenty of people would take, more natural remedies if it was explained and they were educated. So, I don't really ever advocate taking sleeping pills. I mean, let's fix the underlying cause. We'll look at labs, fix everything. But this shows today is about cortisol and sleep. So, I'm going to have that person start resting more. I'm going to figure out why are they so stressed. And, I can't make them quit their job. But, hey, maybe they, get up late for work. And so immediately when they get up, they're just rushing. Like, I try to teach people to get up early, relax, have a good breakfast, give themselves time to maybe read something they enjoy, and then drive to work. And then, maybe they're training 6 days a week. I can pull that back to 3 or 4. I try to look for ways that I can pull back stress first and foremost. And then I'll address the problem too with products that we made at New Ethics, Cortis. I'll have 2 timed at night, 30 minutes pre-bed. And, if that's not solving it, I'll add in Relax. That's our more neurotransmitter driven product. And I'll have them do 2 full droppers. And you know what? 99% of the time you're going to fix that because, you're attacking it from all, levels. Now, obviously nutrition has to be right. I mean, we're nutrition people here, right? Like I think all our listeners eat pretty well, but I mean, if I was dealing with a gym pop, obviously the diet has to be addressed too. But I'm going to use cortisol and our Relax. But, for the listeners out there, basically I'm just attacking it from lowering cortisol with nutraceuticals and then boosting neurotransmitters with nutraceuticals while I address the stress. And then the goal will be over time, once all that's fixed and the underlying issue is fixed, you wouldn't need Cortis and Relax at night. You would just use it as needed rather than daily.
All right. Well, what do you guys think about marijuana then for sleepy sleep? Because I see that there are a lot of different studies saying it might not be so good for you to help you sleep. And I know from my whoop that if I smoke up too close to bed, I do not have as good a recovery.
No, the recovery and HRV will be down.
Yep.
But as far as THC helping sleep, it's amazing. But we learned that it doesn't allow you to get into as deep of sleep, it seems.
Yeah. How long was yours off by? Because
I would go from greens, like I don't remember exactly, but I would go from greens, recovery, down to like definitely yellows and reds. And I could see HRV drop by 20 points for me.
Yeah, I could see that. Now, the other thing is, it's interesting. If I microdose earlier in the day, I'm guaranteed like a great HRV recovery the next day. But if I microdose anywhere within 6 hours of going to bed, my sleep is not as good because LSD does impact your sleep. Even a microdose impacts my sleep just a little bit. Sue, what's your take on marijuana? You smoking before you?
Hey, I smoked last night.
You stepped in getting wild.
Did it affect my sleep? See, I don't track my my HRV like you guys do, so I can't quantify anything. So I can only speak subjectively. I don't smoke that often either. Probably like 3-4 times a week before bed. But I don't feel any different in the morning. So that's all I have to say.
You need to get a whoop and join us so we could create a little team together. Right? The 3 of us could compete. I'll be whooping y'all's asses on green days. What's y'all's take on alcohol as a way for a sleep aid? Because we all know that there are a lot of women who will say, I just do a glass or 2 before bed, or a couple guys, guys would be like, I just do a whiskey before bed, or etc.
It affects HRV even worse.
All right. Well, let's talk about what it does for cortisol and for the sleep. So I'll throw that to you real quick, Jason, and Sue, I'd like your take on it.
Well, I know what alcohol does. It increases GABA, which is one of the calming neurotransmitters. So I get that. But in terms of stress to the body and recovery, my worst recovery ever was a night after drinking. It was, we went to Nashville. I had probably 6 drinks. I think my recovery that day was 18. It was super red and 18. I don't even know. I think the HRV was 12. And that's not even getting like blasted. I mean, 6 drinks. I know maybe some people would be hammered, but like it was over the course of a night. I mean, I'm 200 pounds. I wasn't even that hammered, but it crushes you. Alcohol just crushes you. So if you use that as your crutch every night, you're just walking around in perpetually unrecovered state.
Yeah, the stuff on the studies with alcohol says that until the alcohol is burned off, you're not getting into REM or deep sleep.
I believe
so. I believe it too, because the nights I've drank where I've gone, like the night I was with you, I think I was in the 20s. I was like, shit.
I take it off now because it just pisses me off. And then it makes me not want to just chill out. And sometimes you need to just have some drinks and chill with your friends. So I take it off because I don't want to see it in the morning. I just don't mess with it. I just put it back.
And Chase is like, this data does not exist to me.
No, yeah, basically. I know it's gonna be bad. So why do I? You know what I mean? I don't need it. It's just gonna make me feel bad. So I don't wear it that night.
I'm gonna start doing that when I go eat Chick-fil-A and have a giant Sonic Blast. Because the next morning I wake up my HRV shit. I'm like, fuck you, Sonic. That was that Sonic Blast right there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sue, what about you on that one?
Like the whole Xanax thing, especially with alcohol, I think it is the worst substance that you can lean on as a crutch, especially if you have sleep issues. There are just so many other natural things that you can try, like 5-HTP, melatonin, valerian root, ashwagandha, Cortis, so many things you can try before you reach out to something so habit forming like that, which over, the long term can exacerbate dysbiosis, increase inflammation, whole bunch of stuff, make estrogen dominance worse. Just don't do it with alcohol.
So I have a female of mine. She drinks, I guess, a serving of red wine a couple nights a week. And if she does that and she meditates every night, like that's what we're working on, but that's what she asked for. And I was like, cool, let's see if it makes work. She actually will wake up green, but if she goes anything over like 2 servings of wine, it pins her way down, like what we're saying. So there's a threshold. So the only way I would tell people to do that would be is if you had a way to monitor your sleep and see what you're really doing.
Yeah.
Which if you're 40 years old, you want to be able to get at least 15, half of your age time in sleep. So for me, I'm looking for about an hour of sleep, deep sleep, and an hour of REM a night. It's like 15% on both is what
I get I get more than both in like 6 hours of sleep, man.
Dude, I'm just more stressed than you, I think.
I would
like way more tidy whities than you do.
I would agree with that, man. I mean, with everything you got going on with the gym and employees, all that adds more stress.
Oh, it's been like that my whole life. So I think it stems back to my childhood and all the surgeries I had. Sure. Where the nurses waking me up all through the night, just different things I had to do. I think I've just have shitty sleep patterns because like I'm the type of person, if I get up to pee, I'm immediately up. I'm up for about 15, 20 minutes before I'll fall back asleep.
Yeah.
So that's why I have to like really, really work at sleep and like all these breathing.
Now I will say, and I mean, I've posted this online before and I think you all have seen it. Like my deep in REM, I have to use like a cortisol product and our relax to get that type of response. But like most people, just so our listeners know, get about 1 hour of deep and about 1 hour of REM in 8 hours. So for me, getting close to 2 of each in 6.5 is what I normally get. I mean, I'm in bed more, but like Jeff said, you lose about 50 to an hour, like that just says no sleep. So even though I go in, it's 7.5, like I get about 6.5 of real sleep. So the more you can maximize that deep and REM, in the sleep that you do get, like the better off you're going to be in terms of recovery and how you feel. And we've both seen this on our HRV Whoop apps. So,
yeah. Well, let's talk about supplements then, since you kind of brought that up. And I know you talked a little bit before, but let's run some scenarios, I guess. So that way maybe we could talk about it. Sue, I'm going to throw the first one to you. Okay. Yeah. You get a male, we'll say 40, low T, high stress job, works out with weights 5 days a week to relieve his stress, and is a perpetual dieter in the sense of he's like most guys. He starves himself Monday through Friday and then eats whatever he wants Friday night to Sunday night. How would you go ahead? How would you sort
that sounds like most women.
I see some guy. I actually have someone like that on the team.
Do you have a couple guys like that?
Yeah.
Guys are the worst about that, man.
Really, man? Most of my guys want to be well
average
fed.
Average Joe guys are the worst.
Yeah, I just don't have a ton of those.
Yeah, you don't have a ton of them, but I have, like, that's my specialty. I love average Joe.
And so you see that more. That's
dude,
interesting.
They'll be like, oh, dude, I lost like 3 pounds. I flipped out. I had to go to McDonald's and have like 3 Big Macs.
What the?
And I'm like, oh my God. All right.
I see that a lot with the CrossFit guys.
Yes, the CrossFit guys are real bad about that. They can't, like, if once they start eating, I remember one guy, he wanted 1 meal a week with his girlfriend, and we had to give it to him at 9:00 at night on Saturday night.
Just so that he finally would go to bed.
Just go home and go to bed, because it would just like open a can of worms, but he did CrossFit.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Sue, talk about that.
With guys like that, first I'd make them aware of the low T issue. If they haven't already had blood work, I'd have them get it to confirm that they do have low testosterone, explain to them the proper ranges, explain to them the risks associated with living with low testosterone, and how the benefits of TRT far outweigh any sort of risk that you may incur from that, provided that it is a true TRT dose. I'd pull down cardio. I had a guy who came to me, like I said, like in this situation, I only have him training 3 days a week, full body. And we started off with no cardio, and now we just added like 20 minutes after each session. And then obviously, like, he was doing keto or paleo or whatever, and just trying to stay away from carbs in general. And so I fed up. And that, it started to resolve some issues. So he's down 7 pounds by, adding the carbs back and everything like that. But yeah, that's where I would start, Jeff. I would start by, giving some quantifiable, numbers so that they know what the problem is, and then explain how to fix that problem. and then you have their buy-in. You start from there.
Okay. What supplements do you recommend in that situation?
Absolutely, ashwagandha or Cortis. So Cortis is also, it's a mix of adaptogens, by Jason's company, New Ethics. So, either or. Sometimes you don't need ashwagandha, but
So it's already in there.
It's already in there, yeah. But those would be the two that I would go for. I mean, there's another thing called like cortisol by NPA. You can try that too. But other than that, supplement side, magnesium and zinc and vitamin D for women. But that's about it. That's all I can think of right now.
Jason, what about you? I'm going to throw it to you for like a 35-year-old gym pop lifestyle female client. And then after you talk about that, I'd actually like for you to break down why Cortis and Relax work well independently and then in tandem with each other, because the three of us use those products, and I actually talk to other coaches about using those products too. Like, look, these are the ways to get results. Sure, there's money there, but it's called the coach's brand for a reason. So I wanted to kind of get your take as a formulator, what your mind is on that.
Yep. Okay, so it's a 35-year-old female client with basically the same pattern as what you gave Jeff.
Yeah, just, stress, like we'll say kids, job, just the usual stuff. But, wants to lose weight, belly fat, and she has your typical syndromes of perimenopause occurring.
Yeah. So, I mean, remember, it's a multifaceted, approach. So it's not just one thing. I'm not just throwing supplements. I'm not just adjusting diet. I'm doing it all. So we're adjusting diet. A lot of times the diet's being adjusted to affect gut health because there's underlying gut health issues. And that's a whole other podcast, but I'm doing low FODMAP. I'm using our gut defender. I'm doing a lot of things to clear up gut. I'm resting them more. I do anything from 2 days of training to 4, and that'll be tops for someone who has cortisol that's cranking too much and they're stuck in a sympathetic dominant state. And the training is scaled back. So the RPE on that is about a 7. And another way to state that, if you coach and want to pass it on, is to say, just stop 3 reps shy of failure. That's another way of thinking about your RPE.
Failure defined as perfect form failure, mechanical failure in that sense?
I don't get that detailed. I mean,
okay. Well, I was just figuring, throw it out there.
Shy of failure, you know what I mean?
Right.
Self-governance has to come in, or else you'd be giving little details like that on every little thing. It's not that end of the world. Just stop shy of failure. We're just trying to get less of driving the body into the ground. And so cardio's pulled back. A lot of them have been doing a lot of spin, hit cardio. So that's gone. All hit is gone. They walk first thing in the morning. That kicks in parasympathetic. I got to get the parasympathetic get kicked in. I got to get people up and thinking about something else rather than their phones and their life right away. So a nice nature stroll is awesome, 30 minutes. But, I walk on a treadmill is fine, but a nature stroll is awesome. And then we address, so the diet's been addressed, that we're pulling stress back by adjusting their training. I will have the people that train 2 days a week, they'll get restorative yoga twice a week, and then they'll get like maybe an upper and a lower. And that's it. And then I start, this person we're dealing with cortisol here. So I'm going to, look at what was their labs. So let's say their labs come in and cortisol in the morning's a 5, and they're telling me I'm sluggish all day and I don't sleep well at night. Immediately I'm thinking flop circadian rhythm. Their 5 on a cortisol test is low. Some labs that might not be clinically low, but it's down there. Like, it's low. You're not cranking out enough cortisol to deal with your day. And then at night, the reason they're not sleeping, I'm thinking cortisol. So it's rising. So what I'm going to do in this situation is I'm going to use Adrenal Health in the morning. Our product Adrenal Health, it's got everything you need in it to start getting cortisol to be produced again by the adrenals. I'm going to give them 2 in the morning and 2 about 2 p.m. And then at night, I'm going to give them 2 to 3 Cortis about 30 minutes pre-bed. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to train to flop the circadian rhythm back to where it should be, where cortisol's up in the morning and down at night. If it's really bad, I will use 1,000 milligrams of ashwagandha with the Cortis. And then if sleep is still a problem, what I'll see a lot is waking up at 2 or 3. Then I add, because waking up at 2 or 3 is usually a serotonin issue. The last 4 hours of sleep or so are serotonin driven. People don't know that. Yeah. So you could add 5-HTP, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our product, relax, because it helps from a GABA, serotonin standpoint, really hit those two the neurotransmitters. And so I'm going to get 2 full droppers of that. So I'm not only am I helping with the serotonin and GABA issues being off, which happens a lot when you've got adrenal issues. And then I'm helping with the cortisol come down too. So I'm listening to symptoms. I mean, this could be completely opposite. They could be wired as fuck in the morning, like just get up and they feel like they're going to run a race, and you get the labs back and it's like a 19, it's a 20. So you need cortisol in the morning, not adrenal health. And then if they're still sleeping bad, then cortisol staying elevated all day. So I might hit them with 2 cortis there in the morning and then 2 in the evening. So you have to read your symptoms and know your tools. And my 2 tools for this are adrenal health and cortis. And then I'm just plugging them in where I've got to get the body not be sluggish or be tired. So, I'm flip-flopping back and forth. And also the Relax has melatonin in it. So we talked about cortisol up, melatonin down. Well, we're going to help supplement a little bit of that until the body can catch up and really start behaving properly, when you can then start pulling the nutraceuticals back.
Sounds like a good plan of attack. I want to throw something out there. I'm going to slaughter the name, so you're going to have to help me along here, but it's phosphatidylserine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what Jessica said, I just call it, PS, but,
yeah, that's a good way
that actually in doses of 400 milligrams, no more than 800 for a short time has been shown to repair the cortisol receptor actually. So you'll be able to utilize that with people who have adrenal fatigue or things like that. I know that I had to do that a little bit after my shows. I put that in along with the New Ethics Adrenal Health. And I felt great within a few, literally a week or 2. But I want to throw out a couple of hacks that you guys could do that don't cost any money if you guys are trying to be conservative and want to maybe fix it without that. And a couple of things you could do, which is real cheap, is get a pair of blue light blockers. $40 for a good pair on Amazon. I use a pair off Raw Optics. It was like $100. But I've used that. I've had a few clients who would be like, no, I get to bed better. And that'd be for people who like to be on their phone in bed, read their iPad in bed, TV in bed. That would be a great investment, as the blue light stimulates cortisol and keeps you awake. So that would be a good cheap one. You could do stretching and yoga before bed. To help kind of unwind, get yourself ready into a relaxed state. Another hack is to eat dinner at least 2 hours before bed, so your meal is already processed, so you're not going to bed very heavy, very worn down. The last thing that I like my clients to do is meditation or breathing, or maybe like a journal, like a gratitude journal or something like that. Just little hacks you could do to kind of get your mind.
One other one, Jeff, that's cheap is chamomile tea. Will bring cortisol down.
Yeah, that's one.
So, you could do like a double bag, double bag.
A podcast by men for women.
So, you could double bag it and have a chamomile tea about an hour, maybe 2 hours before bed while you're doing some of those other things that you were talking about. And if you are managing stress and getting your diet right, you might be able to do just that and have a very good impact without having to invest in supplementation. You might not get fully there, but you will definitely have a change.
Yeah, I've realized, so from what my thing is with Gym Pop, men can take like blue light blockers, stretching before bed, and get really good improvements. Women, I usually have to add an extra layer on there. So usually it's cortis, and then if it has to go further, I step up from there to like relax or kind of depending upon other stuff. But those are some ones you guys could do. You guys can utilize that are cheap, that don't cost anything other than building out the time and the routine, which if you're going to lower stress, you need to be building out your routine anyway to make sure that it's something that doesn't stress you and pressure you and make you feel like you're always go, go, go. So those are some little hacks you could do.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if someone describes their life to you as they never have enough time, they're going to have a cortisol issue.
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. And that's something I almost thought about putting on my intake question. Do you have enough time in the day? Question mark.
It's a good question to ask.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think so.
Because if that's their mantra, they'll know it and they'll be like, yes, I say that all the time. And then those are the people that always have these issues.
Absolutely. Is there any other little things you guys would like to chime in, or do we put a little bow tie on this one and say we're done?
I think that's been pretty good. That's been over 40 minutes. I think we've covered a nice, we've explained it. We've given things to help. So I think we've done a nice job on it. Sleep's important, guys. Like it's really paramount in terms of muscle building, in terms of, you heard about how it can affect fasted blood glucose, repair for your mind and your body. So,
hormone levels, sex hormone levels,
all of it is
progesterone steal, the testosterone
important.
steal, all that.
So important. So, if you think cortisol might be affecting it, and the underlying obviously is your stress, hopefully this helps you, at least get that under control.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, we get a lot of questions about the Whoop app thrown to the podcast. Now, we could do a podcast on that, but that's only going to apply to a very small group of people who's doing it. So what Jason and I are doing is we're trying to put that up on our stories. So make sure you're giving us a follow on our IGs and then on the Excellence Cartel as well, in the Physique Education Collective, because you're going to see it on one of those, odds are. But really, the Whoop app for me was, I'm a very visual person. That's why I like bodybuilding. I'm like you, Jason, what you said long ago about dieting. If I see a little change every day, it gets me more motivated to keep going.
Yeah.
I see sleep. And before, I could be honest, like my sleep was terrible, 80% bad, 20% good. Now I flip-flopped it. Not every night's going to be perfect sleep. You can take all the supplements, do all the right things, and you're still going to have some crappy sleep. But the Whoop app has allowed me to be more mindful of breathing more during the day to make sure I'm chilled out, of making sure I take time for myself, and making sure I build good little sleeping habits and so forth. And since then, I can honestly say I feel better. I feel less inflamed. I'm way more functional mentally. So there's a lot that really goes into that. But really, where Whoop is its gold is it allows you to see your deep and your REM sleep. And then you can make your adjustments
almost
accordingly.
40, you're still getting better, in terms of bodybuilding. And, those types of things, I think, are what guys who fade out don't track and take a look at. And so over time, their body breaks down, and then they look back and wonder why. Well, none of these things were taken into account, from cortisol to stress to their gut to their, tracking their sleep, however you want to track it. You don't have to get a Whoop, but figure out some way to be tracking it. But you've improved a lot this year, at almost 40 years old.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say on this, it's that insight, that visual data that has allowed me to improve, because I've been able to go, okay, what things am I not doing and what things do I need to do? I will say this though, if you're a woman with a Whoop band, you guys can really watch your period and the ups and downs and be able to adjust your training and your food accordingly, because there are certain times during your menstrual cycle, actually your 28-day cycle, where you're going to be good sleep and bad sleep. And there's stuff that I've seen with some of my clients where I'm like, okay, and you can see it every month. On this one day, it's really bad or really good. And they can tell you exactly where they were in their cycle. So that will give you insights too, and different little hacks you guys can. But we get that question a lot. I wanted to address it because it would only serve a few people. But if you guys have any questions about Whoop, you guys feel free to message me directly. Jason, they can message you too. And then we could kind of answer on that. But what do we want to do next week? Do we want to do another Q&A and have these people shoot us some stuff? Do we want to take a deeper dive on PCOS? I know Sue wants to talk about why none of us should eat meat anymore and be completely vegan and vegetarian shit. I remember when you tried that for a few days, you're like, dude, I'm shitting green.
It's impossible to get the type of bodybuilder protein and eat a vegan diet. That's what was messing him up.
Oh, yeah. I know. I was like, oh God, I couldn't imagine.
I tried a couple diets late last year and early this year. I tried that vegan diet, and I also tried a diet where I was eating like ham sandwiches like every meal and cheddar rice cakes. And that didn't
Why did you do that? What was the who gave you?
I just got lazy.
Guru gave you that fucking diet?
Lazy with my macros. And this is like, I sent the picture to Jason. Jason's like, you're getting fat. And like, we got blood work done, and my fucking fasting insulin was like super high. And he was like, we gotta stop this. We gotta bring you back down.
I give him a big leash. Like at this point, like unless we're prepping, I'm like, all right, try it, man. Let's see what happens. If you want to be a guinea pig, go for it, man.
I've never had you call me fat my off season though. No. That is one thing I can say you've never called me. No. I'm like, every time I check in, you're like, looking still lean. All right, had some food. And I'm like, yes, Chick-fil-A. Like, so I'm just the ham shit makes me laugh, Sue, because I just haven't pictured you like fucking the end of dodgeball when the guy's like sitting there on his couch after losing his gym. And he's like eating that pizza. It's like falling all his fat ass. And my picture Sue like with a ham sandwich and mustard just pouring all down his chest hair.
That was Ben Stiller, right?
Yeah, that movie was Yep, Globo Gym. God, that movie's so good. I can still watch all that. But hit us up with some topics you guys want to hear. We've kind of covered some stuff. We could take deeper dives on gut health. We could do a deeper dive on stress, cortisol. We could do whatever. We could do. I know we need to do one on PCOS and kind of tie that up on how we work on it. We had the great Victoria Faulkner on, and then we had to, she talked about the clinical aspect of it. And I know we need to probably talk about the practitioner aspect, but we want to hear from you all and get you guys engaged. So anything you guys would like to hear, hit one of us up and we'll put it on a list and start attacking it.
Agreed.
Love the Q&As. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no, the Q&As are fun, man. I really enjoyed that one we did last week. I mean, it's cool to talk deep on a subject like this, but there's something about getting the questions from those people because then we know exactly what they want to know.
Right.
We're able to curtail it to them.
Yeah, I mean, people should keep sending them. We'll do it.
You guys can ask me what my craziest cycle I ever did was, and I will gladly answer it. Probably it's going to be as good as Sue's. Sue was probably I did 5 G's a test.
No, I'm going to say yours was the worst.
Dude.
It wasn't from me, people.
Oh, no. I had a coach that yanked me in the hospital twice. So, I mean, from rhabdo. I think that's why I jumped to Jason at that point. I was like, yeah, I'm tired of competing. Tired of constantly going in and out of the hospital over some dumb shit. So, what do you guys got planned the rest of the day? Anything exciting?
More work.
Of course you guys do. Yes, lots of
more work.
Shit.
Reading. Yeah.
Yeah. I got a lot of emails hitting me, staring at me.
What are you reading, Sue?
Well, I'm actually reading 2 books right now. So this book, I think I told you about Woman Code.
Woman Code?
About, syncing your cycle to your training and diet and all that stuff. But I'm also reading this book, Jeff, which you recommended to me. Maxwell.
Developing the Leader Within You.
The 2.0 version. Because I'm going to actually weave some of that into the business courses that I'm offering for other coaches. So leadership is a huge aspect of business, obviously, as you know.
Yep.
So I want to shore up, my knowledge there and offer some of that. So.
Yep. The big thing about leadership is it's all about how you are seen by everyone else. Is that ability to get those deposits and withdrawals. And the more people you influence that follow you, the further you go.
Exactly.
So. Well, gents, it was good as always. I will get this stuff put all together, and I look forward to seeing you beautiful faces next week.
All right.
Good.
See y'all. Bye.
Thank you all.